The Qianlong Emperor's letter to George III. You, O king, live beyond the confines of many seas, nevertheless, impelled by your humble desire to partake of the benefits of our civilization, you have dispatched a mission respectfully bearing your memorial. Your envoy has crossed the seas and paid his respects at my court on the anniversary of my birthday. To show your devotion, you have also sent offerings of your country's produce. I have perused your memorial. The earnest terms in which it is couched reveal a respectful humility on your part, which is highly praiseworthy. In consideration of the fact that your ambassador and his deputy have come a long way with your memorial and tribute, I have shown them high favor and have allowed them to be introduced into my presence. To manifest my indulgence, I have entertained them at a banquet and made them numerous gifts. I have also caused presents to be forwarded to the naval commander and 600 of his officers and men, although they did not come to Peking, so that they too may share in my all-embracing kindness. As to your entreaty to send one of your nationals to be accredited to my celestial court, and to be in control of your country's trade with China, this request is contrary to all usage of my dynasty and cannot possibly be entertained. It is true that Europeans in the service of the dynasty have been permitted to live at Peking, but they are compelled to adopt Chinese dress. They are strictly confined to their own precincts and are never permitted to return home. You are presumably familiar with our dynastic regulations. Your proposed envoy to my court could not be placed in a position similar to that of European officials in Peking who are forbidden to leave China, nor could he, on the other hand, be allowed liberty of movement and the privilege of corresponding with his own country, so that you would gain nothing by his residence in our midst. Moreover, our celestial dynasty possesses vast territories, and tribute missions from the dependencies are provided for by the Department for Tributary States, which ministers to their wants and exercises strict control over their movements. It would be quite impossible to leave them to their own devices. Supposing that your envoy should come to our court, his language and national dress differ from that of our people, and there would be no place in which to bestow him. It may be suggested that he might imitate the Europeans permanently resident in Peking and adopt the dress and customs of China, but it has never been our dynasty's wish to force people to do things unseemly and inconvenient. Besides, supposing I sent an ambassador to reside in your country, how could you possibly make for him the requisite arrangements? Europe consists of many other nations besides your own. If each and all demanded to be represented at our court, how could we possibly consent? The thing is utterly impracticable. How can our dynasty alter its whole procedure and system of etiquette, established for more than a century, in order to meet your individual views? If it be said that your object is to exercise control over your country's trade, your nationals have had full liberty to trade at Canton for many a year and have received the greatest consideration at our hands. Missions have been sent by Portugal and Italy, preferring similar requests. The throne appreciated their sincerity and loaded them with favors, besides authorizing measures to facilitate their trade with China. You are no doubt aware that when my Canton merchant Wu Chaoping was in debt to the foreign ships, I made the viceroy advance the moneys due out of the provincial treasury and ordered him to punish the culprit severely. Why then should foreign nations advance this utterly unreasonable request to be represented at my court? Peking is nearly 2,000 miles from Canton, and at such a distance, what possible control could any British representative exercise? If you assert that your reverence for our celestial dynasty fills you with a desire to acquire our civilization, our ceremonies and code of laws differ so completely from your own that, even if your envoy were able to acquire the rudiments of our civilization, you could not possibly transplant our manners and customs to your alien soil. Therefore, however adept the envoy might become, nothing would be gained thereby. Swaying the wide world, I have but one aim in view, namely, to maintain a perfect governance and to fulfill the duties of the state, Strange and costly objects do not interest
me.
If I have commanded that the tribute offerings sent by you, O king, are to be accepted, this was solely in consideration for the spirit which prompted you to dispatch them from afar. Our dynasty's majestic virtue has penetrated unto every country under heaven, and kings of all nations have offered their costly tribute by land and sea.
As
Your ambassador can see for himself, we possess all things. I set no value on objects, strange or ingenious, and have no use for your country's manufactures. This, then, is my answer to your request to appoint a representative at my court, a request contrary to our dynastic usage, which would only result in inconvenience to yourself.
I have
expounded my wishes in detail and have commanded your tribute envoys to leave in peace on their homeward journey. It behoves you, O king, to respect my sentiments, and to display even greater devotion and loyalty in future, so that, by perpetual submission to our throne, you may secure peace and prosperity for your country hereafter. Besides making gifts, of which I enclose an inventory, to each member of your mission, I confer upon you, O king, valuable presents in excess of the number usually bestowed on such occasions, including silks and curios, a list of which is likewise enclosed. Do you reverently receive them and take note of my tender goodwill
towards you.
A special mandate. You, O king, from afar have yearned after the blessings of our civilization, and in your eagerness to come into touch with our converting influence, have sent an embassy across the sea bearing a memorial. I have already taken note of your respectful spirit of submission, have treated your mission with extreme favor and loaded it with gifts, besides issuing a mandate to you, O king, and honoring you with the bestowal of valuable presents. Thus has my indulgence been manifested. Yesterday, your ambassador petitioned my ministers to memorialize me regarding your trade with China, but his proposal is not consistent with our dynastic usage and cannot be entertained. Hitherto, all European nations, including your own country's barbarian merchants, have carried on their trade with our celestial empire at Canton. Such has been the procedure for many years, although our celestial empire possesses all things in prolific abundance and lacks no product within its own borders. There was therefore no need to import the manufactures of outside barbarians in exchange for our own produce. But as the tea, silk, and porcelain which the celestial empire produces are absolute necessities to European nations and to yourselves, we have permitted, as a signal mark of favor, that foreign hongs should be established at Canton, so that your wants might be supplied, and your country thus participate in our beneficence. But your ambassador has now put forward new requests which completely fail to recognize the throne's principle to treat strangers from afar with indulgence, and to exercise a pacifying control over barbarian tribes the world over. Moreover, our dynasty, swaying the myriad races of the globe, extends the same benevolence towards all. Your England is not the only nation trading at Canton. If other nations, following your bad example, wrongfully importune my ear with further impossible requests, how will it be possible for me to treat them with easy indulgence? Nevertheless, I do not forget the lonely remoteness of your island, cut off from the world by intervening wastes of sea, nor do I overlook your excusable ignorance of the usages of our celestial empire. I have consequently commanded my ministers to enlighten your ambassador on the subject, and have ordered the departure of the mission. But I have doubts that, after your envoy's return, he may fail to acquaint you with my view in detail, or that he may be lacking in lucidity, so that I shall now proceed to take your requests seriatim, and to issue my mandate on each question separately. In this way you will, I trust, comprehend my meaning. 1. Your ambassador requests facilities for ships of your nation to call at Ningpo, Chusan, Tientsin, and other places for purposes of trade. Until now, trade with European nations has always been conducted at Amen, where the foreign hongs are established. to store and sell foreign merchandise. Your nation has obediently complied with this regulation for years past without raising any objection. In none of the other ports named have hongs been established, so that even if your vessels were to proceed thither, they would have no means of disposing of their cargoes. Furthermore, no interpreters are available, so you would have no means of explaining your wants, and nothing but general inconvenience would result. For the future, as in the past, I decree that your request is refused and that the trade shall be limited to Amen. 2. The request that your merchants may establish a repository in the capital of my empire for the storing and sale of your produce, in accordance with the precedent granted to Russia, is even more impracticable than the last. My capital is the hub and center about which all quarters of the globe revolve. Its ordinances are most august, and its laws are strict in the extreme. The subjects of our dependencies have never been allowed to open places of business in Peking. Foreign trade has hitherto been conducted at Amen because it is conveniently near to the sea and therefore an important gathering place for the ships of all nations sailing to and fro. If warehouses were established in Peking, the remoteness of your country, lying far to the northwest of my capital, would render transport extremely difficult. Before Qianlong was opened, the Russians were permitted to trade at Peking, but the accommodation furnished to them was only temporary. As soon as Qianlong was available, they were compelled to withdraw from Peking, which has been closed to their trade these many years. Their frontier trade at Qianlong is on all fours with your trade at Amen. Possessing facilities at the latter place, you now ask for further privileges at Peking, although our dynasty observes the severest restrictions respecting the admission of foreigners within its boundaries and has never permitted the subjects of dependencies to cross the empire's barriers and settle at will amongst the Chinese people. This request is also refused. 3. Your request for a small island near Chusan, where your merchants may reside and goods be warehoused, arises from your desire to develop trade. As there are neither foreign hongs nor interpreters in or near Chusan, where none of your ships have ever called, such an island would be utterly useless for your purposes. Every inch of the territory of our empire is marked on the map, and the strictest vigilance is exercised over it all. Even tiny islets and far-lying sandbanks are clearly defined as part of the provinces to which they belong. Consider, moreover, that England is not the only barbarian land which wishes to establish relations with our civilization and trade with our empire. Supposing that other nations were all to imitate your evil example and beseech me to present them each and all with a site for trading purposes, how could I possibly comply? This also is a flagrant infringement of the usage of my empire and cannot possibly be entertained. 4. The next request for a small site in the vicinity of Canton City, where your barbarian merchants may lodge, or, alternatively, that there be no longer any restrictions over their movements at Amen, has arisen from the following causes. Hitherto, the barbarian merchants of Europe have had a definite locality assigned to them at Amen for residence and trade, and have been forbidden to encroach an inch beyond the limits assigned to that locality. Barbarian merchants having business with the hongs have never been allowed to enter the city of Canton. By these measures, disputes between Chinese and barbarians are prevented, and a firm barrier is raised between my subjects and those of other nations. The present request is quite contrary to precedent. Furthermore, European nations have been trading with Canton for a number of years, and as they make large profits, the number of traders is constantly increasing.
How
would it be possible to grant such a site to each country? The merchants of the foreign hongs are responsible to the local officials for the proceedings of barbarian merchants, and they carry out periodical inspections. If these restrictions were withdrawn, friction would inevitably occur between the Chinese and your barbarian subjects, and the results would militate against the benevolent regard that I feel towards you. From every point of view, therefore, it is best that the regulations now in force should continue. unchanged. 5. Regarding your request for remission or reduction of duties on merchandise, discharged by your British barbarian merchants at Amin and distributed throughout the interior, there is a regular tariff in force for barbarian merchants' goods which applies equally to all European nations. It would be as wrong to increase the duty imposed on your nation's merchandise on the ground that the bulk of foreign trade is in your hands, as to make an exception in your case in the shape of specially reduced duties. In future, duties shall be levied equitably without discrimination between your nation and any other, and, in order to manifest my regard, your barbarian merchants shall continue to be shown every consideration at Amin. 6. As to your request that your ships shall pay the duties leviable by tariff, there are regular rules in force at the Canton Custom House respecting the amounts payable, and, since I have refused your request to be allowed to trade at other ports, this duty will naturally continue to be paid at Canton as heretofore. 7. Regarding your nation's worship of the Lord of Heaven, it is the same religion as that of other European nations. Ever since the beginning of history, sage emperors and wise rulers have bestowed on China a moral system and inculcated a code, which from time immemorial has been religiously observed by the myriads of my subjects. There has been no hankering after heterodox doctrines. Even the European missionary officials in my capital are forbidden to hold intercourse with Chinese subjects. They are restricted within the limits of their appointed residences and may not go about propagating their religion. The distinction between Chinese and barbarian is most strict, and your ambassadors request that barbarian shall be given full liberty to disseminate their religion is utterly unreasonable. It may be, O king, that the above proposals have been wantonly made by your ambassador on his own responsibility, or peradventure you yourself are ignorant of our dynastic regulations and had no intention of transgressing them when you expressed these wild ideas and hopes. I have ever shown the greatest condescension to the tribute missions of all states which sincerely yearn after the blessings of civilization, so as to manifest my kindly indulgence. I have even gone out of my way to grant any requests which were in any way consistent with Chinese usage. Above all, upon you, who live in a remote and inaccessible region, far across the spaces of ocean, but who have shown your submissive loyalty by sending this tribute mission, I have heaped benefits far in excess of those accorded to other nations.
But the demands presented by
your embassy are not only a contravention of dynastic tradition but would be utterly unproductive of good result to yourself, besides being quite impracticable. I have accordingly stated the facts to you in detail, and it is your bounden duty reverently to appreciate my feelings and to obey these instructions henceforward for all time, so that you may enjoy the blessings of perpetual peace. If, after the receipt of this explicit decree, you lightly give ear to the representations of your subordinates and allow your barbarian merchants to proceed to Chekiang and Tientsin with the object of landing and trading there, the ordinances of my celestial empire are strict in the extreme, and the local officials, both civil and military, are bound reverently to obey the law of the
land.
Should your vessels touch the shore, your merchants will assuredly never be permitted to land or to reside there, but will be subject to instant expulsion.
In that
event, your barbarian merchants will have had a long journey for nothing. Do not say that you were not warned in due time. Tremblingly obey and show no negligence.
A
special mandate.